Imagine if it were your job to provide help to the people of Gaza. Would you be able to sleep at night? And what would you be hoping for?
Ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. If we have a ceasefire and the opening of the crossing and we can flood with assistance to Gaza Strip, we will be able to prevent this catastrophe.
Philippe Lazzarini, who is from Switzerland, is Commissioner General of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, also known as UNRWA. It's one of the most challenging positions in the UN right now. From the United Nations, I'm Melissa Fleming. This is Awake at Night. Welcome, Philippe.
Thank you for having me, Melissa.
You lead UNRWA, which serves almost 6 million Palestinians in the Middle East with education, healthcare, and other essential services. But of course, since the horrific Hamas terror attacks on Israel on October 7th, as well as the hostage-taking, and Israel's brutal military response, your work is now dominated by the war in Gaza, in which thousands of Palestinian civilians have been killed. When you think of the situation in Gaza, Philippe, there must be so much keeping you awake at night. What is really at the forefront?
There is definitely a lot keeping me awake at night. What happened with the 7th of October has been unprecedented. It has caused a deep national trauma in Israel, but the response to October 7 also has been absolutely unprecedented, horror and tragedy impacting the people in Gaza. What keeps me awake at night is that, we are under extraordinary pressure. There is a campaign going on trying to equate Gaza and the Gazan with Hamas, trying to equate the UN with Hamas and UNRWA with Hamas. And basically today, the Israelis are asking for the dismantling of the agency.
Extraordinary numbers of deaths, missing, injured, destruction. And many of those who died were your own staff members. How does that make you feel? I mean, does that make your resolve even greater to try to keep UNRWA going?
Oh, it makes definitely my resolve much greater. It's not only the killing, which is unprecedented. As of today, 180 UNRWA staff have been killed since the beginning of the war in Gaza. But beyond the killing, there have been also a blatant disregard of the United Nations in general, its premises, its operational space, and also its staff. I have drawn the attention of the member of the Security Council, reminding them that not only 180 staff have been killed, but 160 of our premises have been targeted, are either completely destroyed or are damaged. 400 people have been killed while seeking protection of the United Nations. We have staff which have been arrested, mistreated, tortured, and then released. And basically we have also installations which have been used for military purposes, either by the Israeli forces or by the Hamas or other armed groups in the Gaza Strip. And this is our blatant disregard of the United Nations, blatant disregard of the humanitarian action, and I believe that we need accountability for this. We need to call for an investigation to make sure that this is not becoming the new norm in the future and elsewhere.
I mean, the attacks by Hamas on the 7th of October were just so horrible, so horrific, so inhuman. But some people accuse you of not condemning them, and that you are somehow linked to Hamas. I mean, what do you say to that, and how does that make you feel?
I have been very clear. I have condemned this attack. I have stressed that this was an attack of a terrorist nature. It was absolutely horrific and abhorrent. There is absolutely no doubt, and we should never underestimate the suffering on the Israeli side and the trauma this attack has also caused. On the other hand, I've also been very clear that this should be no justification to conduct a war without respecting any rules. And this is the impression that we had about the disproportionate impact of the response. Indeed, today we are talking about an unprecedented number of people killed in the Gaza Strip, among them a lot of children, more than 13,000 children. I have even described at a given time that this is a war against the children. We have much more children killed in the Gaza Strip in 6 months than the number of children killed in 4 years across all the conflict in the world. We talk about already 17,000 unaccompanied children. We talk about more than 1,000 children who have been amputated, most of them even without anesthesia in the Gaza Strip. And today we have 500,000 girls and boys at the age of primary and secondary school, deeply traumatized, living in the rubble in the Gaza Strip. But it does not mean that we are not condemning the attack of October 7th. The problem in this war is people express deep empathy for the Palestinians, are incapable to express a similar empathy for the Israeli, or vice versa. This deepening polarization, this dehumanization, the inability of the people to really feel compassion for the other.
Yeah, and I think it seems on the Israeli side, of course, that the ongoing festering pain is linked also to the continued holding of so many hostages. Is there any appeal that you have made on behalf of these hostages, and have you ever thought about their condition?
I have mentioned in many of my intervention to the United Nations the plight of the hostages and called also for the release of the hostages. But the first thing we need is a call for a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. We need the hostage to be released. We need a beefing up, scaling up of the humanitarian response in the Gaza Strip. We need to improve the protection of the civilian, and also to tell them that there is still a future, because people in Gaza don't see their future anymore. There have been cycles of conflict hitting the Gaza Strip, but each time people believed that there might be a better time. There was always a kind of rehabilitation. But this time, everyone realized that the situation will never, ever go back to what it was before this conflict.
I mean, some people say that there must be so many people suffering under PTSD, but actually for people living in Gaza, PTSD doesn't exist because it's perpetual, is what the P stands for.
Yeah, it's definitely perpetual, it's collective, it's individual. It will take decades, basically, to heal. I have also shared this message to the member of the Security Council, saying the peace process per se might not be enough to promote a lasting peace. We need also to heal the soul of the people. We have to acknowledge how deeply traumatized they have been. They need to, reconnect, and this will take a lot of time.
I mean, you mentioned when you were talking about the children, the large numbers of just unaccompanied. Unaccompanied is a term that means they are orphans. Their whole family have died. How does that make you feel, and what do you see as a future for these children?
It's very difficult to envisage the future nowadays in a context where all the political avenue seems to be shut down, in a context where we are still talking about more military operation and offensive to come in the Gaza Strip. And the more we wait, the more we will make the future of these children uncertain. the kids in Gaza, as we know, are deeply, deeply traumatized, are living in absolutely unbelievable, appalling living condition in overcrowded either shelter or in the street, in the rubble. So their schools have been completely destroyed. As a top priority, once a ceasefire is concluded, we have to find a way to bring them back into education setting. But to do this, we will also need to help them to heal their trauma. And this is definitely a top priority. And I keep saying, if you are trying to get rid of an organization like ours, you are also getting rid of the main instrument which could offer and propose a better future for the children in Gaza. We are the only one having 10,000 teachers ready to reactivate or restart the teaching for the children. If the agency is gone, there is no one else to take over because there is no functioning administration. There is no functioning state in the Gaza Strip. So I keep also warning that dismantling UNRWA not only would have an impact on our collective ability to respond to this unprecedented humanitarian crisis, but it will also compromise the future of 500,000 kids because there is no one else to step in to offer education and a better future for them.
I mean, Israel very openly says that it's UNRWA's mandate that is the primary reason why they want the dismantling of UNRWA, and then often mistakenly say that UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, which is responsible for all the other refugees in the world, has a different kind of mandate, and there are no perpetual refugees. And yet, I mean, you've been around the world. I have too. I've met many great-grandchildren who are refugees because they're unable to return to their countries or places of origin. What do you say to that about the mandate? What is it about the UNRWA mandate that is so disputed?
We are talking about the Israel-Palestinian conflict, the longest-lasting, unresolved conflict. It's not because the member states have given the mandate to UNRWA to provide public-like services to the Palestinian refugees that today there is still no two-state solution. If there is no two-state solution, it's because of the inability of the international communities and the party to have reached such a solution. So I do believe that this argument is pretty dishonest.
What do you say to people when they say, why can't UNRWA just go away?
I would have dreamed to be the last Commissioner General because that would mean I would hand over the services and the mandate of UNRWA to a nation state. The entire agency has been geared to be a temporary agency. Unfortunately, it's a lasting temporary after 75 years. But still, our staff, and this is a difference from any other UN agencies, are more compared to a civil servant. They're primary teachers, they're primary health workers, and in fact, we are always trying to get ready to be able to transfer our services and our activities to a future state of Palestine. So I would absolutely love to be the Commissioner General phasing out. Unfortunately, we are not yet under this scenario. In the contrary, there are now pushes to try to dismantle the agency in the absence of a political solution. And I also truly believe that if this would take place, it would undermine the future aspiration of the Palestinian for self-determination, and it would definitely undermine the prospect of a lasting, fair solution for the Palestinian. So UNRWA is, whether we like it or not, we are also symbolizing the expectation that the Palestinians do have for their future.
You actually go into Gaza, and you've seen the Gaza before and after. Is there like an image that you can't get out of your mind and that you've perhaps used when you've gone into parliaments on TV and tried to explain how bad things are?
I have two images from the first time I went into Gaza, which was basically 2-3 weeks after the beginning of the war, when there have been a total siege. And you might recall at that time, fuel was lacking everywhere to the extent that there were no bakery functioning anymore, no water pump functioning anymore, and so there was a huge water scarcity. And I remember my first visit in Rafah, in a school which should be a place for education, but it was a shelter with thousands of people. It was already overcrowded, and I had this little girl looking in my eyes and begging for a sip of water and begging for a loaf of bread. And, having 4 children of this age, and having her staring, insisting, it's something I cannot get rid of in terms of image. I went back a few times to Gaza, but the last time I went, I was also surprised and taken back by the sudden absence of energy and I would say even light in the eyes of the people, a population which was just on a kind of automatic survival mode, completely exhausted, completely empty, living in the street, hardly sleeping, basically, because at night you have bombardment, you have the drones, you live in the street, it's in winter, and something has completely gone. At the beginning of the war, people were still in a proactive survival mode. They lost a relative, it has been a total tragedy, they lost all their belonging, but they were on the move. But this energy of even moving was not here anymore.
Part of the role of your staff is to ensure people don't starve right now. And, we had a report, believe it was in February, from the most important scientific body, the IPC, saying that famine was imminent. And yet UNRWA has been forbidden from delivering in the north of the Gaza Strip, where the needs are the greatest and where people might be starving to death. How frustrated does that make you feel?
I mean, it's absolutely outrageous and unbelievable that we talk about hunger in Gaza. I mean, the population has never, ever encountered hunger before. And yet we are here seeing unfolding under our watch, our eyes, one of the fastest evolving looming famine, which has been completely fabricated. It's man-made and which can easily be reversed through political will or political decision. It is deeply frustrating, but it's outrageous and makes me very angry that we are prevented now to move food from the south to the north. Indeed, as you say, the north is one of these pockets of hunger. That's where we are the nearest from a situation of starvation and famine. And even here, UNRWA has been prevented now for months by the Israeli authorities to move our assistance from the south to the north.
If you could make one appeal right now to alleviate the hunger of the people in Gaza and the suffering, what would that be?
Ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. It's only with a ceasefire that we will be able to have the necessary operational environment to access the people in need. And the ceasefire means also to be accompanied by the opening of the crossing. If we have a ceasefire and the opening of the crossing, and that we can flood with assistance to Gaza Strip, we will be able to prevent this catastrophe.
I mean, that little girl that you mentioned who was begging you for a sip of water, where do you think she is now, and how do you think she's faring?
I do believe she's still in Rafah, most likely still in this school, but I don't know what will happen to this little girl if the military offensive of Rafah is really going ahead.
I mean, you've seen so much war and conflict over your career. You've served in Somalia, Angola, and Lebanon, among many other places. Has anything shocked you in particular about this situation in Gaza?
What has shocked me the most is how quickly the social fabric and the diversity of this society has been destroyed, and how quickly the Gazan have been treated almost like a monolithic block, and how little feelings and empathy and compassion people had for Gaza. What has shocked me is how the international community has bought the narrative that indeed Gaza is Hamas.
Gaza is not all Hamas.
Gaza is definitely not all Hamas. First of all, Hamas came in power in 2005. The more than 50% of the population is under the age of 20, so have nothing to do with this. And the reality is that the people in Gaza are like you and I. They have the same kind of expectation in life, the same kind of dream of a family, of a job, of hobbies than anywhere else. It used to be an extraordinary, vibrant society, Gaza.
I mean, you've been very much caught up in the kind of online vitriol and warring. I'm sure that you've received lots of love, but also plenty of hate on social media and in other forms of media. How is that affecting you?
I have been well advised not to read anymore all this posting in the social media. I was tempted at the beginning, and obviously it touched on some sensitive nerves, but it also distracts you of what you have to do. So basically, I use the social media to communicate, but I don't read the response to my communication, or don't read all, as you said, unpleasant, under-the-belt attack we are under, because, as you know, I'm depicted as the head of a terrorist organization, which should end up to the International Court of Justice, and so on. So the less you read, the better you feel.
But it still is, I'm sure, a tremendous amount of pressure that you're under. I mean, how do you cope with all this pressure? Do you have any strategies?
I don't think I have a strategy per se. I try to function also on a kind of a pilot automatic mode, taking the issue one after the other. Every situation is here to be addressed in a certain way, but the stress is absolutely incredible, but not only on me, also on my staff, on my colleagues. We are a very small team, but we are a very, very, I would say, tight, strong team spirit among the people. We would all have the good reason to be completely burned out, but we also know that we cannot yet afford to be. We are also enjoying an extraordinary support from headquarters, starting with the Secretary General, who is directly involved in supporting the agency, in supporting me in my capacity of a Commissioner General. He came recently in the region for a solidarity trip, which has boosted also the morale of the people on the ground.
I mean, you've spent most of your career working as a humanitarian, although you did for a short time, I believe, work for the private sector. Do you ever regret that choice that you went into this field?
Not at all. After 10 years with the International Committee of the Red Cross, I thought that maybe it was time to shift and to go to the private sector, which I did for a few years. But as I said once to one of the associates of the private bank I was working in, that I felt I was far too much paid for what I was doing, but far too little for how much bored I was in the private bank. And it was time for me to leave because I could not see myself looking at the screen and evolution of the market for the next coming 20 years. So I realized how much international affair and situation in which I was in was part of my DNA. So my time with the private sector, with a private banker, was quite short. It was 3 years between the ICRC and the United Nations.
I'm looking at all the different places and projects you've been involved in, and what are you most proud of?
I'm always very proud when I get stories later on of people telling you how the impact on their personal life of decision you have taken that sometimes you are absolutely not aware, and you hear it 5 years or 10 years later. I have bumped into people who 20 years later who told me that your decision on that day have saved my life. And then you realize that you can have a real impact. Now, it's also scary, the influence being given to you. But I think this is definitely one of the source of motivation behind it.
Is there a country in which you served where you feel really nostalgic for?
I think I have been back in most of the countries. I've served twice in Somalia. I've served twice in Lebanon, in occupied Palestinian territories, 3 times, twice in Angola. So in most of the places, in fact, I have gone back. And it will be difficult for me to rank the one I felt the most. They have been so different.
I'm hoping you'll be able to return to a Palestine that's not an occupied Palestine.
I think it's a dream of many of us. I am still hopeful, but if we look at the current trajectory on the ground, unfortunately, it seems we are getting further away from that.
Let's hope not. I mean, so many young people have seemed to have been ignited since the beginning of this war. They're also listening to people like you. I mean, you have 4 children, I believe. Would you, or are they following your footsteps?
They're too young to follow the footstep. The oldest is 14, so I don't know. They might, maybe 1 or 2 of them, but I think it's far too early. But they are very much aware of what their dad is doing. They have been very much exposed also to the country where we have been, because they are all born in different countries, and they have only recently moved to Geneva, which is for them also somehow a new country.
And I believe your wife is a human rights lawyer.
Exactly.
So your conversations at the dinner table must not be about the weather.
Not really. Not really. It's a lot about how do we better promote, for example, accountability.
Is it possible to combine life in the field with family life?
It is possible. I mean, we are trying, but there is a cost, obviously. I'm on the move most of the time. I don't see the children as much as I would like, and it has also an impact on them. My youngest child was 6-year-old. At the beginning was watching the news on what's going on in Gaza, but it had a negative impact on him. Couldn't sleep at night anymore. Started to ask his mother, how come people are killing and targeting children. And if daddy is going there, will he also be killed or not? So basically we decided that we have to stop having the news and the TV at home, and which is helpful.
What advice would you give young people who want to pursue a career in the international field of humanitarian or United Nations or ICRC? What would you advise them?
I would definitely advise be driven by your belief, your passion. Don't compromise. And by doing this, you can achieve much more than what you think. But please do not join this organization to become a bureaucrat.
Thank you, Philippe.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you for listening to Awake at Night. We'll be back soon with more incredible and inspiring stories from people working against huge challenges to make this world a better and safer place. To find out more about the series and the extraordinary people featured, do visit un.org/awake-at-night. Do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and please take the time to review us. It helps more people find the show. Thanks to my editor, Bethany Bell, to Adam Paler, Josie LeBlond, and my colleagues at the UN, Caterina Catiti, Roberta Politi, Geneva Damayanti, Tulin Batiki, Becerra Kostova, Angelica Davis, Carlos Macias, and the team at the UN studio. The original music for this podcast was written and performed by Nadine Shaw and produced by Ben Hillier. Additional music was by Pascal Wise.